Here. I just want to say it's a pleasure to have you guys who really enjoy talking about this stuff, because this is what we do every day. So talking about sports science and basketball and how we can make athletes better, how we can make athletes healthier, and really make your job as coaches easier in terms of sort of seeing the way that this is done best is a really, really fun thing to do. So the goals today, just to understand the importance of sports science and what that means. Understand how athleticism and injury prevention is a continuum. So it's easy to talk about one or the other when you're in a rehab setting, to think about that torn ACL, or when you're trying to dunk, talking about how to get over the rim. But how do you manipulate that on a day-to-day when you have athletes who might be a little bit sore, athletes who get a little bit faster? Where do you draw the line? How do they connect? How do you connect them? Understanding the importance of movement. So throughout the whole sort of landscape, how does movement, the way people move, affect these different factors? And understanding the importance of systematic development. So how do we take a kid who's 8 years old and basically guide them to a place where we know they'll be successful when they're home? So this is the story of FITS. We are a facility that works with high-performance athletes of a number of sports. Basketball is a really big one for us. These are some of the athletes. I don't know if you can really see the pictures there. But we've had athletes basically at every level now. We have NBA representation, national team representation, and colleges all over the United States and Canada, as well as high school and obviously again the grassroots. We also have a big role in winter sports, with alpine skiing being a major group of athletes that we work with, both women's and men's. We have, what was the bronze? World Juniors? We have a bronze out in World Juniors with alpine skiing, so that represents a podium international finish for that sport as well. And volleyball is sort of our third major sport where we have sort of a very big presence. And again, the picture at the top was silver at World Juniors last year for 2 of our athletes, and they'll be playing again at the end of the month in World Juniors, so hopefully we get another podium finish. So what is sports science? So if I asked you guys, and feel free to answer, what comes to mind when you hear the word sports science? Give me some ideas. Anything? So you hear someone on TV say, I'm a sports scientist, so they're saying, we need to use more sports science with our athletes. What do you think of? Okay, well, one thing I think about is, how do we make people faster? Look at Usain Bolt. How fast could he go, right? We saw him destroy records in Beijing and Germany right after that, and he's still running just as fast now, 4 years later. But if you look through the course of time at how fast we've gotten in the 100-meter dash, he basically took it and went really quickly. You say, okay, he made that huge jump in performance, so how do we make the next jump? Right? How do we figure out how to make him run even faster than that? What is the absolute fastest he could possibly run? If we take any human, we could say, let's put them in a laboratory and do everything we've ever heard of and thought of from a science perspective. How fast can we make them? How strong can we make somebody? This is the world record holder in the 48-kilo division for women for the clean and jerk and the snatch. So at 48 kilos, which is 105 pounds, she can clean and jerk 278 pounds. How many of you guys can clean and jerk 278 pounds? Right? For all those guys in the NBA that think they're strong, how many NBA players do you think can actually clean and jerk 278 pounds? That's a big number. So if we can take an athlete if they could take an athlete like that and make her so powerful for that frame, how do we make a basketball player as fast as they can be, as powerful as they can be? Because the Olympic weightlifters actually have some of the highest vertical jumps of any athlete. So if she can jump in the 30s and she can clean 278 pounds, how do we use some of those coaching tools to say, okay, how do we make our basketball players jump higher, be faster? How do we move all these records and keep bringing them down, So this is just a nice gathering of what sports science really is. It's really mixing a whole bunch of different categories and taking pieces of all of them to do exactly that, to develop athletes properly. Right? There's nutrition, biomechanics, physiology, strength and conditioning. So you can talk about the practicality of what exercises to use. What are the best, joint angles and things like that for biomechanics? What should you be eating? What kind of supplements work? What ones are illegal? What do you have to avoid, right? So you can even go into psychology, right? What is the mindset of how you should go about your practices, about your games, about getting better, about your performance, right? We've all seen athletes who should be amazing and they get to a game and something doesn't happen, right? Sometimes there's a mindset kind of issue that you need straightened out. So there's a whole bunch of categories that go into sports science, and especially this one right here, etc. Because there's all sorts of new developments every day in different fields that might end up coming back, and we say, oh my God, we can use that. We can use that to make someone faster, stronger, jump higher, injury resistant.
So this is, we can just open this up. So we're going to answer, or kind of like dialogue about a couple of really important things that are the quintessential sports science questions, right? First one is, how do we identify talent? So I'm going to put it up to you guys. Like, how will we identify talent? Just kind of anything. Interest? Interest?
Yeah. Interest, passion.
Passion, okay.
Keeps you warm.
For sure.
Look for some natural gifts.
Natural gifts like hair color,
Length,
length, arms.
length of reach. And
Absolutely.
length of their limbs and stuff like that. Do some testing on them.
Sure.
Or watch footage and pick things that you think are talented.
So obviously, you can imagine that any professional team, any national sport organization, even a recreational coach has some sort of strategy as to how he chooses their team. If you're at the pro level, you're investing millions upon millions of dollars in these athletes, and you need them to perform. So obviously, you try to do your absolute best to figure out how to identify talent. So you can look at all professional sport leagues, and they now are very much engaged into combines, using physical measures to kind of figure out how athletic they are. So you'll see it in the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, a whole bunch of different types of sports where they're looking for metrics, numbers. How fast can they run? How high they can jump? How much can they lift? What's their capacity? What's their endurance level? A whole gamut of physiological profiles that denotes their athleticism, and based on their athleticism, hey, are we going to invest in this person? But I'm going to tell you something that's very, very important, is that maybe they're choosing the wrong things. Maybe their metrics aren't right. Maybe they're missing out on a whole bunch of people that maybe, if they develop properly, they can even jump higher. And we call that the black box effect. What that means is, if you only care about how high a person jumps, it's as if you're putting a black box around how they actually jump. So there may be lots of potential in a particular athlete that hasn't been revealed, or it's just being hidden, right? Andrew Nicholson, who we worked with, totally represents that. Because if you were to look at his numbers, you'd be thinking, wow, how is necessarily, we may have some concerns about his athleticism. He went 20.5 in his counter movement jump, which is a standing vertical with no momentum. His max jump, he went 30.5. So to kind of give you, typically that would be probably average in the old NBA, but now we're not seeing that. We're seeing athletes becoming a lot more athletic. So max vert is really creeping up to be about 33. Average vert, just standing vert, it's about 30. So what we can do within sports science is take any athlete, any one of those athletes, and make them jump higher if we actually deal with how they actually jump. And here's a good example that we have with one of our early basketball athletes on the senior women's national team, Alicia Tatum. And when she came to us, she was, a specimen. She became an All-American in her senior year running track and field because she decided to run track in her final year. So she came to us and her vert was 24.5. Within 3 weeks, because we identified a movement dysfunction, we actually looked into what was going on in that black box, what her body was doing. We took her vertical to 30 inches. An average college level athlete jumps 22 inches. She's world class at 30. And the amazing thing about this is we haven't just done it with one athlete, we've done it with many, and we've replicated this across all the sports that we work with. So sports that aren't even involved in jumping, we've had several alpine athletes jumping 28 inches. And why is that so important? We'll talk about that, as we go on. I like this picture a lot because you can kind of think that if you just kind of like playing video games and things, you have so many kind of points that you can distribute across a whole bunch of qualities. So imagine you're playing NBA Live or something like that, you want to soup up your own character, you only have like 500 points to distribute across, like say, speed, like strategy, defense, offensive skill sets, endurance, like explosiveness. And you have to distribute it across that. That's kind of like sports science. Like, what do you want to pick and choose? How do you want to develop certain type of qualities? So there's a whole sea of different things that you can work on. You could work on things like this guy here, this clown, doing bench press. You can do agility. You can do some, speed agility type stuff through cones. You can do a whole bunch of balancing. You can do squats. But the next question is, how do we start developing talent? So let's say, for example, we ID that, hey, this person has some good qualities. You know what, like they actually have some good movement qualities, they're jumping reasonably well, but how will we start developing that talent? So, we just threw this up there, deliberate systematic development. There's so many different type of acronyms and words that kind of mean the same things. But I think the first place is to kind of try to define athleticism. And what does it mean that we're trying to do in sports science component, right? This is going to be a huge mouthful, right? And we're going to go take our time and kind of go over what each component really means. In a nutshell, it's development of an elite sensorimotor metabolic system that produces robust, efficient, precise, fatigue resistance, and powerful movement qualities that are integrated into sports schemas. Right, so slow it down, break that down. So development, build it. Right? So it's not to say that you have it, it's not to say that it's innate. It's really built. You progress so that you move through various levels and you become elite. You become elite at this ability to sense, right, and respond. Right? Where you can do this in almost any type of context and your movements are efficient, precise. You don't get tired and they're incredibly explosive. That's what we're trying to do within our athletes is look at the context of their sport and try to produce these robust, efficient, precise movements. Then we want to make sure that that individual will be successful in that particular sport. So we need to put all of those qualities and integrate that into their sport. That's what we're trying to do. And almost anything that fits underneath the sun, like whether it's nutrition, biochemistry, biomechanics, we're trying to do this with so many different type of options. So imagine like there's this athlete here and we're just trying to figure out how do we develop them? What are some of the considerations we have to develop that next great athlete? Okay. So this is just a little quick list, right? And everyone kind of will start arguing there's genetics, opportunities and what they get exposed to, their coaching qualities, training, injuries, nutrition, what type of family support, what type of home environment do they have. Like there's a plethora and tons of research that goes into trying to figure out what's the pathway of excellence, what made them great. But then we also have certain type of training factors that we need to consider. Like when is one type of training appropriate? When should you train and when should you compete? Right? this idea about, sometimes you need to pull back from competition so that you can actually develop yourself, hold back a little bit so you can get improvement. Other times you need to, instead of actually training, you need to have some rest and recovery. So sometimes athletes really believe that you should be kind of going all the time, but maybe the very best thing is understanding when you should actually rest and recover. So many athletes perhaps are overburdened and trained and having so many time commitments from school to competition that they never get a chance for recovery. Other times, we need to be able to understand that maybe games and competition and skill development don't take a precedence. Maybe certain qualities are pass and fail. Can you guys think of any quality that might be like a pass or fail quality for a basketball player? This is a challenging question, really, really tough, challenging question. But it'll kind of define you as a coach. Because if you constantly drill down on a quality that you just need to get enough of, where your performance doesn't matter, doesn't get any better if you get beyond that, you need to understand what those pass-fail qualities are. So here, let me throw this out there. Do you guys feel that vertical jump is a pass-fail quality? Again, just raise your hands. Who thinks no? Yeah, it's an absolute, it's definitely not a pass-fail quality. Can you ever jump high enough? Can you ever be explosive enough? Right? This is something that you're constantly pursuing over and over. Like, you can never have enough. But developing explosiveness comes at other types of prices. So if you're trying to develop explosiveness at the same time that you're developing your conditioning, you're taking your body in two different ways. So we know that from a conditioning perspective, what your cardio is, we know that we need to get you into a certain level, and beyond that, the sport is not determined, your performance is not dictated based on having the most ridiculous cardio. Well, who would you pick on your basketball team? Would you choose the person that just won the marathon, or would you rather have a guy that won the 100 meters? Right? Sorry? Marathon? Okay, who thinks marathon? That's an interesting comment.
I do.
We'll get one.
I can't change both.
Wow,
I get to pick one player, that's fine, I take a sprint, but if I can have both, one guy stays on longer. Just saying.
Okay, this is really good because it's helping me understand what the community starts thinking. Like I remember doing a talk where flexibility was the front and foremost, the foremost kind of thought that performance is dictated somewhat based on flexibility. So now this is a very interesting thing okay, we can take this, because I know the research in hockey a little bit better in this regards than basketball. A study was actually done for hockey players where they took all of their respective VO2 maxes. And then they looked at how they performed. Those that actually had a VO2 max of, let's say, 70 did not perform any better than those with the VO2 max of 60. There's a finite limit as to how much conditioning affected their performance. Okay? I don't know if that study has been necessarily done in basketball, but there is definitely a threshold. And the senior women's basketball team definitely recognizes this because they do not choose to do a beep test beyond 12. Because you don't want your athletes to be conditioning themselves to get better and better on a test that doesn't impact performance. So going to 14, 15, what does that do to your body composition? What does that do to your explosiveness? It takes an explosive athlete and robs them of the very thing that's going to determine their performance, which is their power. You don't want a marathon runner, because guess how high a marathon runner jumps?
0.
Right? They're not doing anything spectacular from an athletic, power-based perspective. You could say that, yeah, they're running, they're able to do this all the time, but they're not going to be explosive. They're not going to be able to defend and take up space, beat a person to a spot, jump over a person, gain space from their opponent. So a really important thing is, you should be wanting those power